Rob had arrived home earlier than when he had told his new wife he would be back from his sales trip. They had been dating for 4 years before he asked her to marry him. That was 3 months ago, and he yearned to spend his well-earned time off with his wife. Then Rob heard the strangest of noises coming from their bedroom, gently placing his bags on the floor so he could surprise his wife as he thought of what she was doing while he was away. Then something his wife said stopped him in his tracks. "Do me, baby. Do me hard." His wife, Trisha, moaned out from their bedroom. In a house that he had bought for her with his own goddamn money was screwing someone else on his goddamn bed. "That's it, I want to feel you for days when Robbie gets home." Rob's fist clenched. His anger burned his face upon hearing his wife's words. Just how long had she been stepping out on him? How long has he been screwing her after someone else had been in there? He knew he'd have to go get a blood test. He wasn't about to catch anything from his whorish wife, that was for certain. His rage burned in his eyes as his own brother was pounding his wife from behind. A brother whom he had covered for because for some odd damn reason he couldn't make the damn trip. Now he knew the reason. It was to screw his wife. While he was doing his job, the crashing sound of the vase breaking apart as it struck the side of his brother's head thundered in his bedroom. "Robbie!" Trisha gasped in horror as Rob towered over them with a maddening look in his eyes. "Baby, I can." "Shut the hell up. Explain. Explain. Just how long have you been screwing my brother?" "A month, a year. All the 4 screwing years we've been dating." "Huh. How long you?" "You know what I don't want to know. Here I was working my butt off so we could have a good life. And what have you been doing? Screwing that piece of shit behind my back and every Tom, Dick, and Harry for all I know." "Robbie, I know. You don't know shit. Get the hell out of my house and take that piece of shit with you." Rob yelled as he stormed out of the room, so his anger wouldn't get the best of him. "Robert, get the hell out," Rob snarled at his brother as he noted the blood-soaked towel he held to the side of his head. "We might be related by blood, but you aren't my brother. I don't want to see you here ever again. And you will be hearing from my lawyer," he said, glaring at his treacherous wife.
"I'm sorry."
"Take that shit and shove it up your arse, Trish. If you didn't love me, why the hell did you marry me? You sure did love spending my money, that's for damn sure. Your shit will be out on the lawn. I'd suggest you get it before trash pickup since that shit nut can't even close a simple deal without someone holding his hand," Rob said, before slamming the door in his soon-to-be ex-wife's face. A few months later, Rob laid face down on his couch. Jack Daniels bottles lined the coffee table. Ever since he had gotten his marriage annulled, Rob had been in a state of intoxication when he wasn't at work or had to drive somewhere. His life might have fallen into a dark pit of despair, but he wasn't an idiot. He would have thought some of his family would have been on his side when word got out. Not one. Not a single damn one had his back. They all tried to get him to come around that Trisha and Brad were happy and that he should be happy for them. Yet they seemed to forget their happiness is what caused his destruction. But no, they chose them, and to his view of things they chose poorly. Rob groaned from his hangover as someone pounded on his front door. His hand meandered around blindly as he sought something to throw at the door to tell whomever it was to leave him alone. Sighing as the falling bottles only made his pounding headache worse. Turning his head when he heard his front door opening. "It smells like a distillery in here," Janet, his sister, who was 2 years older than he was, said as she walked into his house. A house she had no right to enter without his say-so, and he so didn't want any of them on his property. Her shawl pressed against the middle of her upper back as the nooks of her elbows held it in place as she held her keys and purse in her hand. "Jesus, Robbie, you aren't even dressed," Janet groaned as she stood at the left arm rest in her bridesmaid gown. "Why the hell would I be? It's my damn day off, and why the hell are you in my house?" Rob asked, trying to keep his voice down so not to aggravate his pounding head. Slyly glancing at her dress, Rob couldn't figure out why she was dressed so formally, even if the dress was hideous. "Well," her cheeks heating at his words. Over the past year, she had seen how Rob had drifted away from the family. He no longer came into the office, unless it was for the mandatory meetings and the clients that were scheduled to come in. Instead, he chose to work from home and email his reports to them. Their parents didn't seem to mind as long as his work didn't slip, and it hasn't, and there have been no complaints from their clients, so she knew he was handling his workload just fine. Even if it seemed to her he no longer put in the hours he once did for their company. Janet couldn't speak on it since he always met his monthly quota. Still, she did miss her brother, missed hearing his laughter filling the office when she's had a hard day. Her kids, his nephew and niece, missed him too, especially since he didn't show up for Thanksgiving and Christmas like he has done since they all left the nest. "Don't you remember what day it is? Didn't Brad mail you an invitation?" Oh, was that what it was? Rob asked coldly, as he scratched his chin, hearing his 3-day stubble rustling as his nails moved through it as he sat up. I tossed it in the fire. Robbie, Janet sighed. I get it, okay, but… is that all? I'd rather go back to sleep now, thank you, Rob said, indifferently. At least come with me. Matt and Debbie miss you, you know? Janet pleaded with her brother. Then bring them over, otherwise I'm not moving from this couch for a few hours more, Rob said. He so wasn't going to that wedding. Robbie, can't you? Don't, Rob said coldly, his eyes shooting to his sister. Fine, Robbie. If you'd rather stay and drink yourself to death, be my guest, Janet said, throwing her hands up. I really wish you would stop, though, she said, eyeing the numerous bottles. Well, when you find Mark screwing some woman on your bed while you're out covering for him, then you can judge whether or not if I've drank enough, Rob said, referring to her husband as he poured himself a shot. Otherwise, see yourself out of my house. Very well, Janet uttered before spinning on her heel, slamming his door behind her as she left. Taking a sip of the brown liquor, what they didn't know was that Rob had been looking for a new job. A job that would take him far away from this city, this state, and his family along with her. Yet with the economy as it was, jobs were hard to come by, and with the field he worked in equally hard. Sure, he could sell about anything. Yet his years were in robotics, and how many of those jobs ever came up? So, he had to wait, had to bide his time. Then when the opportunity arose, and if the rate of compensation matched what he made, he would be gone, leaving nothing in his wake to draw him back. Rob was drying his face after he walked out of his bathroom. He knew couldn't drive, he still felt the alcohol in his system. Yet his head wasn't pounding any longer, so he took solace in that. Tossing his wet towel into the bathroom, he no longer used the master bedroom as it felt too soiled, for lack of a better word, after what had happened, and he could only assume it had happened numerous other times. So the day after, in a fit of rage, not caring how expensive the mattress was, he had borrowed his friend's truck that, thankfully, had no connection to his family and drove out to a field. There he watched as the fire cleansed the taint upon his house as the ashes rose to the sky. So now it was used as a storage room. Although he still used the master bath otherwise, it was just wasteful to allow all the money he had spent on the house to go to waste. Rob just didn't spend any amount of time in the room that was adjoining it. As he sat on the bed he had bought after he had kicked Trisha out of his house, in his underwear, he pondered what he was going to do for the rest of the day. Obviously, it wasn't drinking since he had to work the next day. He needed to be at the top of his game, so he could outshine his brother in sales. A wicked smile graced his lips as the blinking light on his phone caught his attention. The light of his screen played along his freshly shaven face. Scowling when he saw 3 voicemails waiting for him, one from his mother, father, and his ex-wife, along with half or so dozen of texts. If it wasn't from their office phones, he didn't answer his parents' calls, and he definitely wasn't going to listen to anything his ex-wife had to say. He didn't care if his parents were disappointed in him for not showing up, so he also deleted their texts, groaning as his mother called again, as he had almost set it back down on the nightstand beside his bed. What? What? No, hi, Mom. How was the wedding? What did I miss, since I didn't bother to show up for it? You know what? I'm too tired for this shit. If you want to whine, do it to Dad, Rob said, ending their call and tossing his phone behind him. Oddly, he felt a little light-hearted by doing that. As his blue jeans rose up his legs, tilting his head as he watched his phone crawl along his bed as it vibrated, picking it up when he didn't recognize the number. Hello? Robbie, don't hang up. What did she think was going to happen when he heard her voice? God damn it, what? Rob yelled into the phone as his sister called right after his ex-wife. Don't you dare take that tone with me, Robert. Janet growled over the line. Then what the hell are you calling me for? My reports aren't due till the end of next week. My quota has been met for the month. What more is there to talk about? Rob asked heatedly into the phone. Brad and Trisha want to ask you something. It's very important. You need to listen to them, Janet said, urging her brother to see reason. Whatever the hell they want, I want nothing to do with them. Rob looked at his phone as it sounded like her phone was being passed off to someone. Robbie, you don't have to speak, just listen, okay? I'm pregnant, and I mean your brother and I, want you to be the godfather, Trisha said, hoping this would heal the rift between him and Brad. I refuse. Think about it, Robbie. Think about what you're saying. Janet's voice came over the line. Rob stood there for a moment, listening to the background noise, knowing he was on speaker. Hearing his mother's and father's chatter, along with the rest of his relatives and Trisha's, he could only assume. I gave you my answer. I am not going to be responsible for any devil spawn that she gives birth to, Rob said, An evil grin raised the corners of his lips at the gasps that came over the line. Let some other foolish mark of theirs handle that it sure as hell won't be me. Robert, that's cold, man, Brad said, as Trisha broke down in tears. No more than you screwing my wife when I was out of town, and the family covering for your crimes, Rob said, wondering how many of Trisha's family knew the truth. Then again, he didn't care. He got his kicks in, chuckling as he ended the call. Tossing it on the bed once again, he finished getting dressed. Grabbing his keys once he had his shoes on, leaving his phone behind, he so didn't want to deal with them while he drove to his getaway spot he had found a few months ago. Twilight was descending as he sat on the porch of his house, with his legs propped up on the railing, watching the daily happenings of his neighbors. He had gotten back a little over an hour ago. He wasn't surprised by what awaited him when he did. It seemed his phone had practically blown up since he was away. His mirth soon evaporated as he watched the two cars screech to a halt before his house. Hell, now what? Rob muttered as he saw his family filing out of their cars, doors slamming in their anger. Where have you been? His father asked in a growl as he marched up his driveway. Do you know how worried we were? His mother cut in as she matched his father's stride. Well, here I am. Now, you want to tell me why you're trampling my grass? Rob asked, aloofly, wondering why Trisha's sister, Kate, was with his sister. Hello, Robert, Kate said sweetly, brushing her deep walnut brown hair behind her ear. Her soft blue eyes peered at him through the lenses of her glasses. When Rob first met her 5 years ago, she was only 17. While some would call her thin-body sickly looking, when he and Trisha had first started dating, he would find her somewhere in her house alone and trying to hide her red, puffy eyes. He would try to lift her spirits and tell her that not all guys were a-holes. That someone would find her attractive, he certainly did, even if she was still thin as a beanpole. Still, that didn't matter to him. She was still a beautiful woman, and from what he could see over the heads of his parents, Kate had filled out into her adult body over the past 5 years. Hello, Kate. It's been a while, Rob said with a warm smile, ignoring his father's question. I was hoping to see you at the wedding, Kate said. Her cheeks heated as she looked at him bashfully. Can you blame me for not going? Rob asked, watching as she shook her head. Don't ignore us, Robert. His father barked. Why not? You seem to ignore my feelings all the time. See what happens when you push aside those who've done nothing wrong. Yet praise those who have, Rob said, looking down at his father. What would you have us do, Robert? Push Brad out of the family? Because of what happened? His father's words stilled in his throat as he saw the look in his son's eyes as he took a sip of his beer. We understand you're angry, son, and you have every right to be, his mother said, trying to be the neutral party, something they'd had lots of experience with over the past year. It's been over a year. Don't you think it's time to forgive your brother? Not as long as he is alive. Robert, watch your mouth. This is my house, my property, and you came uninvited to it. If you don't like how I talk on my own land, there's your car, Rob said, pointing to his father's high-priced sedan. No one's keeping you here. Robert, please, his mother pleaded with him. Just think about it. We miss you. It's not the same with you gone from every aspect of our lives. Well, you chose a side. If you don't like the repercussions of that choice, that's on you, not me. I'm the one who's lost 4 damn years on a woman who never loved me. 4 years. 4 years of her screwing who knows what. In my own house. Yet I'm treated like I'm the one who broke all the rules, while you all throw yourselves at her and Brad's feet just to keep the peace. Well, you know what? Screw the peace. Fine, Robert, I hope you change your mind, his mother said, laying her hand on her husband's arm. As of now, you're on a month-long leave. Do what you want. Go where you want. Stay here and sulk in this house for all I care. But when the month is over, I want you at the table at Thanksgiving, his father said, thinking he could bully his son into forgetting his pain. And if I'm not? Rob asked, calling his bluff. Then don't bother coming to Christmas dinner, his father said, spinning on his heel, marching off to his car, muttering under his breath that he couldn't browbeat his youngest son like he used to be able to. Wasn't planning on it, Rob said, to his father's back. Please don't say that, son. Go somewhere, relax, and come back home. I really would enjoy it if you made it to Thanksgiving dinner, his mother said, reaching out and gently squeezing his right hand before leaving to go join her husband in the car. I guess I wouldn't be able to change your mind with anything I say, huh? Janet asked as she stared up at her brother. Not one bit, Rob said, taking another sip of his beer. All right, but Robbie, you know we do love you. Don't make us choose between you or Brad. You might think we have, but we aren't on either side. We are just as upset at what Trisha and Brad did to you. But don't hold it against us because we want to keep the family together, Janet said, before turning around. I'll wait in the car, she said. Her hand lightly touched Kate's forearm. So, Kate placed her hands behind her as she shyly approached his porch. How have you been? Been better. Why? Rob asked, finally stepping off his porch to face her at eye level. Well, Kate's heart fluttered. Her cheeks blushed hard as Rob stood before her. Ever since he went out of his way to cheer her up whenever the boys her age harassed her daily, she had watched from afar as her sister threw away a good man. A man that cared for her when she was too greedy to see it. Now it was her turn. She sure as hell wasn't about to let this opportunity pass her by. She was going to show him that she wasn't like her sister, that she would always be true to him. She had kept herself free just for this chance. Sure, she's been on dates, fooled around here and there. Yet the parts that truly mattered she wanted only him to touch. To be the only one that will ever touch her body in such a manner. I was thinking, she might run the hottest women's lingerie company, not Victoria's Secret, a more classy, more affordable women's undergarments company where the material was as fine as Victoria's Secret just without the price. Where for the price for one of their embroidered bras you could buy one of her bra and panty sets along with a teddy to match. And still being this close to him made her feel like that love-sick teenager that longed for the days when he would come over. Just so she could hear his voice, to be near him, to feel close to him. That since I'm in town for a while that maybe you'd like to spend some time with me, Kate said. The light evening breeze gently lifted her hair as she watched how the lights of the surrounding houses played along his eyes. Like a date? Rob asked, his interest pegged. Sure, he might have had offers before once he was free from his ex-wife, yet they were nowhere near as strong or as beautiful as Kate was. At least that's what he thought. If you want, Kate said, feeling her face burning hot. How she felt so foolish about him uttering the word date. Get a hold of yourself, Kate. You've been on dates before, she berated herself in her mind. Sure, when would you like to go out? Rob asked, feeling like he was 14 again when he asked the first girl to ever go out with him. I heard there's an orchestra playing tomorrow night. Stepping closer to him, to allow him to feel the heat of her body, the smell of her light perfume. How about you pick me up at 7? Kate asked, her left hand slowly reached out, her fingers lightly touching his before her hand slipped into his. Sure, where are you staying? You remember where my parents' place is? Kate asked, taking the chance and closing the last remainder of the gap between them. Of course, Rob nodded. Good, Kate said, a smile formed on her face. I can't wait, she whispered as her cheek brushed against his. Her lips brushed lightly along his ear as she told him her private number that very few had. 40 minutes later, Kate giggled as her back bounced on her old bed as she fell backwards on it. Her right hand rested over her heart, feeling how rapid it was beating. She couldn't believe it went so well. She was sure that Rob would have said no. Her legs kicked in the air, causing her jeans to become taut along her backside. Kate, what's got you all excited? Her mother asked as she stood in her daughter's old bedroom. I got a date, Kate said excitedly as she danced in place. Oh, a smile touched her lips, happy to see her daughter this happy. She knew how difficult the years has been on her, and like all mothers she wanted her daughter to be happy. And just who's the lucky guy? Robbie, Kate said, dreamily, not seeing the look in her mother's eyes. I want you to stay away from that man. He's damaged goods, her mother said sternly. Just who do you think you're talking to? Kate said coldly. She might be her mother, but no one told her what to do. Who and what I spend my time on is my business, mother, not yours. Kate, don't you take that tone with me. That man just broadcasted your sister's dirty laundry to all our family. So? Trisha brought it upon herself. What did you think was going to happen, mother, when they asked him that? Do you not care that she lied, used him, cheated him out of a life he thought they were going to live? After all that, did you really think he would jump up and down and agree? Kate asked, slipping into her CEO persona. He could have been more tactful, her mother huffed, crossing her arms, causing her graying dark brown hair to bounce against her chest. Do you know how hurt your sister was? Whatever pain she felt, I'm sure it's nothing compared to the 4 years she lied to him, and she finally got what she deserved, Kate said, crossing her own arms, standing off against her mother. I don't approve. It isn't for you to decide it. If you want to waste your time on him, throwing her arms into the air as she walked out of her daughter's bedroom. Music from her teenage years played softly in the background. Her hips swayed as her fingertips danced along the surface of the top of the sewing machine that had launched her business. Staring out the window of her room, allowing her mind to wander down the path of the unknown future. She did hope they did have one together. Kate was willing to make it work between them, something that her sister never was. She knew Trisha well enough to know that she only cared about his money, not the man that made that money. Looking down her chest, a small smile graced her lips as her hands rested on her stomach, imagining what it would be like to carry their child. To hear the pitter-patter of tiny feet running through her penthouse condo. Watching Rob chasing their child around as his, or her, infectious laughter filled their home. Sighing, wrapping her arms around herself, she couldn't wait for tomorrow night. Rob woke around 7:30, his hand slammed down on his alarm. He had forgotten to turn it off when he went to bed last night, rolling back over, pulling his sheet back up his body now that he didn't have to deal with making calls and whatnot. Or that was his plan until a knock came upon his door. Bolting up right as another came upon his door, throwing off his covers wondering who would come over at such an early hour. Snatching his robe off the hook on the back of the door, pulling the robe across his bare chest, tying a loose knot in the belt to hide his boxers. He so wasn't about to get fully dressed just to tell someone off and to return to bed. Rob's voice died in his throat as he jerked his front door opened. He wasn't expecting to see Kate standing at his door, nor was he perturbed to find such a beautiful woman on his porch. Her deep walnut-colored hair was held up and tight in a ponytail. A single bang draped down her face, its light curl gently kissed her cheek. Her light blue eyes had a sparkle to them as she gazed warmly at him. Kate wore little makeup, not that she needed it, and to his befuddled mind she didn't need to. His eyes instinctively ran down the teal, ruffle, backless, V-neck autumn knitted, winter sweater, noting how it clung tightly to her chest. Taking a dry swallow, feeling his Adam's apple bob as his brown eyes fell upon her slender hips as her faded blue jeans hugged them tightly. Closing his door slightly as the denim looked painted on those toned thighs of hers to hide his awakening snake from her view. His brain finally took notice of the bag she held at her side. It seemed minor when it was beside the gorgeous woman before him. "Morning, Robbie," Kate said sweetly, feeling her heart hammering in her chest. She didn't think he'd answer the door in just a robe. Her blood pounded in her ears as she caught a flash of his bare chest. Was he naked? She moaned in her mind. "Morning, Not that I'm happy to see you, but why are you here so early?" Rob asked, as he hid his lower half behind the door. "I thought we could have breakfast together," Kate said, holding up the bag from the local bakery. "Unless you don't want to?" A tad bit of sadness touched her words, thinking she had moved a little too fast. "Of course I do. Just let me put on some clothes," Rob said, flashing her a smile. "Really?" Kate's head shot up. Joy danced along her stunning eyes at his words. "I have everything set up out here, so we can enjoy eating in the morning sun," she said, her smile touched from ear to ear. "I'll be as quick as I can," Rob said, feeling his heart going a million miles an hour. It had been a long time since anyone made him feel like this. That flutter, that excitement one felt when you felt some connection with another. Yet you don't know what it is. Nonetheless, you're curious to find out where it leads, to see how far that feeling leads you down that dark rabbit hole. What twists and turns it would take you on that strange and hopefully happy journey to where only the fates could say. Dashing into his room, his clothes went flying from his drawers as he searched for something to wear. While it was only breakfast, for some reason he wanted to look decent and not the disheveled, haggard look he had when he just rolled out of bed. Running his comb through his hair, splashing himself lightly with his best cologne, Rob wanted Kate to enjoy this morning. She did, after all, come all this way to see him. Kate sat excitedly in her chair. She had set up the table on his porch just so it would feel as intimate as she could over croissants, some fresh fruit, a bit of cream cheese, and 2 bottles of orange juice. Her blood hammered in her ears as she heard the doorknob turning. Her nostrils flared as she caught the scent of his cologne as the wind carried it to her. She felt her brain go blank as Rob stepped out onto the porch. The way his lips held a warm smile on them as he slowly pulled out the patio chair. "I hope I didn't keep you waiting, Kate," Rob said, as he sank into the seat. "And no," clearing her throat as she caught herself stuttering. "Not at all," Kate said, hoping he couldn't see how bad her face was burning. "I hope you'll like what I brought for us," she said. Her hand waved over the items. "I believe I will yet. It's the company that makes the meal all the sweeter," Rob said, seeing Kate's cheeks rapidly heat. "Oh my," Kate whispered behind her hand as it hid her trembling lips. "Shall we?" Rob asked. He was worried about his sly flirts not being receptive, yet it appeared Kate welcomed them. "So Kate, what have you been doing for the past few years? Last I heard you left for New York a year into your college life," he said, as he cut open the croissant. "Oh." Kate's ears perked up, her Her mind and eyes had been too focused on his hands, watching how he gently held that flaky pastry and wondered if he would hold her just as gently if, or when, her body was pressed against his. "I kind of run a women's clothing line," Kate muttered. Her single bang swayed before her as she fumbled with her own croissant, shuddering as she felt and saw his hand covering hers. That's amazing. Her own parents never praised her accomplishments. To them, she was always that odd, quiet girl they had raised, not the strong, powerful owner of her own multimillion-dollar company, the woman that she had grown into. Not that she could blame her parents. All parents were like that, or that's what she thought. Still, to hear Rob praise her meant the world to her. A soothing warmth spread throughout her body as his hand remained on hers. "Thank you," Kate whispered. Turning her hand over, her fingertips lightly played along his wrist, feeling how his pulse raced, secretly pleased that she had the same effect on him as he did on her. "So, what have you been doing since you left my sister? Any ladies I should be wary of?" she asked, with a sly smile. "Have there been offers?" "Sure. Did I take them up on their offers?" "Not in a million years." "I understand. Something like what Trisha did isn't easy to get over, no matter how much everyone is pushing you to let it go," Kate said. Her thumb brushed along his knuckles. "Who knows, if I play my cards right, I might talk you into coming to New York to see me," she said shyly, brushing her bang behind her ear. "Maybe," Rob nodded. He had no idea where this was going. However, he was eager to see this to the end. Laughter filled the air as Kate and Rob chatted over their breakfast, loving how those eyes of his never left her as she regaled him about her years in New York, enjoying their quiet meal, feeling like it was only the two of them there. How she always thought it would feel like if her sister hadn't kept him all to herself. Yet what could she do? Trisha was always self-centered when they were growing up. Nonetheless, her mistake was her benefit. Now Kate could show him how a woman was supposed to treat the man they were in love with. However, with all good things, it must come to an end. With the last drop of orange juice gone, the cheese and fruit gone, how she just wanted to spend the day with him, sighing when she knew that would look a tad too needy. That was something Rob didn't need at the moment. He needed to know that she was nothing like her sister, that she would never do to him what Trisha had done. Her eyes glanced to the right, seeing Janet's car pulling up to the curb, knowing that now it would be a good time to make her exit. Plus, this way, at least, she hoped it would make Rob want her more. "Well, seems you have company," Kate said warmly, watching how his eyes hardened as he stared at his sister's car. "You don't." "I would love to stay, Robbie. Yet a girl has to remain mysterious," Kate said, casting him a seductive smile. How that genuine smile melted her heart. "Plus, I have a spa appointment, and I do want to look my best for tonight," she said, sliding her chair back as Janet got out of her car. "Kate, even if it's just a towel, I know you'd make it look astonishing," Rob said, as he too got to his feet to see her to her car. Kate was a loss for words. It was rare that anyone could make her speechless. Her mind was so in flux, she didn't realize that they were standing by the door of her rental car. Noting how Janet was standing a couple yards away, trying not to get between them. "Thank you for having breakfast with me," Kate said shyly. "And thank you for bringing it," Rob said warmly. "You are more than welcome to come over any time. I think," pulling him close to her, biting her lip as his hand rested on her left hip. "I would really enjoy that," Kate whispered before she leaned in. Her soft, velvety lips embraced his as she finally tasted the man that she's been in love with for the past 5 years. Her hands ran along his waist as her arms wrapped around his body, feeling his tongue slipping into her mouth. Her own met his as they tasted each other. Her hands ran up his back. Her nails scraped along his shirt as she lost herself in that kiss. Her chest rose rapidly. Her breath was heavy as she pulled away. There was no doubt that their kiss had her panting in want. "I'll see you tonight," Kate stammered as her hand fumbled around looking for the door latch. "I can't wait," Rob said, with a coy smile, waving to her as she pulled out of his driveway, watching her car disappear into the distance, wondering how tonight was going to go. "Robbie, can we talk?" Janet asked, from behind him. "What about?" Rob sighed. He thought they had said everything they needed to say last night. "Please, Robbie, look at me," Janet said, her feet gliding along the soft blades of grass. "Aren't you supposed to be at work?" Rob asked, as he turned to look at his sister. "Dad let me take a few hours off so we could talk. Just us, no one else," Janet said. She missed the hours they would share at her desk when he wasn't busy, taking her mind off of the mundane task of keeping the company's books straight, ensuring that their employees were paid on time, their vendors were paid, and that every cent from their contracts was there in their accounts. "You want to talk, fine. Don't expect me to reciprocate," Rob said, walking back to his house, knowing it was going to need a deep cleaning before he could bring Kate over. He so didn't want her to see the mess it had become. Feeling his sister at his back as he entered his home. "I'm fine with talking as long as you listen, little brother," Janet said sternly. She knew how hard it was to take a spouse cheating. She and Mark had hit a rough patch a few years back. They hadn't been intimate for some time then when raising Matt and Debbie was taking a lot out of them. Mark had left his phone behind one day, and being a good observant wife, she knew his PIN code even if he didn't think she knew it. So, when she heard his phone just pinging, his text came pouring into his phone as she cleaned the house. Her curiosity got the better of her. How she wished she had never picked up his phone. How she cried into her pillow as she read the text he was sending to some woman. While he admitted to it the moment she called him out on it, yet it went no further than texts. She still felt betrayed by it. It took a long while before she could trust him again and many hours in couples counseling. Yet they worked through it, but she still had her doubts. Still, it was nothing compared to what her brother had walked in on. She was amazed by his self-control he had shown that day. Janet didn't know if she could be that restrained if it was her that had walked in on Mark Hilt deep in some woman on their bed. Yeah, Rob muttered as he walked into his kitchen to grab some trash bags. "Don't you ever air this place out?" Janet asked, opening the living room window. "Nope." "Well, I see you're getting along with Kate. I'm happy that someone can make you smile again," Janet said, turning as she heard her brother walk into the room. "Yeah, what of it?" Rob asked, indifferently. The bag rustled as he began stuffing it full with the bottles that lined his coffee table into it. "Nothing, Robbie. I'm just happy to see you smile again," Janet said, helping him straighten out his living room, pleased to see her brother coming out of that dark hole he had been in for the past year. She knew nothing she said would ever take that kind of hurt away. It was something only time could heal. She just wanted to make sure he knew they were there for him, that whatever it took they would be there. Janet just wanted the opportunity to have that chance, not being shut out of his life like he has done the past year. "So, did I hear something about a date?" Janet asked coyly, lightly giggling as she saw her brother blush. She hadn't seen him blush that hard since he was 13 when the neighbor girl that lived in the house to the left of them gave him his very first kiss. "I'm pleased to see you finally getting out of this house," she said, nodding her head when his living room looked presentable once again. "Robbie, why is there junk cluttering this room?" Janet asked, confused, as she stood in the doorway that led to the master bedroom. "I turned it into a storeroom after that day," Rob said, as he walked out the door with the full bag in his hands. "Why aren't you using?" Stopping herself when he shot her a look as he walked back in. "Right. I probably wouldn't want to sleep in the same room if Mark did that," she said, closing the door. "Then why haven't you moved if you can't stand living here? Have you seen the market lately? I probably wouldn't get half of what I paid for this house if I sold it right now, and I'm so not being a landlord," Rob said, as he moved past his sister to tackle the kitchen. "Well, how about we have a double date?" Janet asked, as she walked into the room. "Do what?" Rob asked, looking at his sister as if she had grown a second head. "What?" Janet huffed. Her hands rested on her hips. "I'd like to know this woman's intentions she has for my adorable little brother. I'm not about to let another one from that family hurt you. Plus, me and Mark could use a night out." A little jealous of Kate. It's been years since Mark kissed her the way her brother had done with Kate. She hoped this would put a spring back into Mark's step. It was starting to feel like the months before she found those texts all over again. "Please, Robbie, I'm not asking for much. A night out, just the four of us," Janet pleaded. "Sounds like a lot to me," Rob grumbled as he loaded the dishwasher. "Please," Janet pleaded as she batted her eyelashes at him. "We'll see." Rob's car door closed as he reached Kate's parents' home around 6:50 that night. Looking in the back, noting the blanket and the picnic basket, hoping Kate liked and enjoyed what he had brought along. While he did bring a bottle of wine along, he wouldn't drink more than 2 glasses because he was driving, hoping they could get the best spot on the lawn to enjoy the music and each other's company. Or that's how Rob hoped the night would go, tugging on the lapels of his black suit jacket as he walked towards the front door. His deep blue dress shirt sat snugly to his chest. His dress pants were nice and crisp as the polish of his dress shoes glinted in the light of the porch. Rob wanted this night to be etched into Kate's mind. He didn't know if it was going to go any further than this, due to her living in New York. Yet he could make this night one to remember, releasing a pent-up breath before his knuckles rasped on the door. "Yes, oh, it's you," Kate's father said as he answered the door. "You got some nerve," he sneered. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Rick," Rob said, indifferently. "You know full well what you did," Rick growled. "Knock it off, Dad." Kate's voice drifted towards him from somewhere deep within her childhood home. Don't get mad at Rob because Trisha can't keep her legs closed. Kate, I will not have you talking like that in my house. Rick barked. Then I guess I'll stay somewhere else then, Kate said. Her deep walnut-colored hair bounced on her shoulders as she walked around the corner of the hallway. Her light blue eyes lustered as Rob peered over her father's shoulder. It wasn't often that she wore her contacts. Tonight was one of those nights. The diamonds and rubies of her earrings and necklace sparkled as the light struck along the gem's surface. Well, if you want to throw your life away on this man, Rick's lip curled as he glanced at Rob. Then that's on you, Rick said, stomping out of the doorway. Rob was at a loss for words as Kate stood before him, wearing a gray, low-cut, U-neck, slim-fit knitted dress that hugged all the right curves, showing off the shape of alluring, shapely hips before stopping mid-thigh. Her manicured toes and their Lelia black open-toe, lace-up stiletto heels wiggled as his eyes ran down her silky smooth legs. Her light, enticing perfume filled his nostrils, lulling him into turbulent waters. Wow. The word escaped his lips as his mind was befuddled by her beauty. Do you like it? Kate asked. Her sensuous smile touched her lips as she did a little spin for him. Kate, you look fantastic, Rob said. And you look. Feeling her heart fluttering as her eyes ran down his body. Ravishing, Kate said, in a wanton-filled purr. Shall we go? Rob asked, stepping back to his left, holding out his right arm to her. Yes, her fingers danced along the nook of his elbow. I think we should, Kate said, smiling sweetly at him as her hand lightly rested on his arm. Closing the door behind her, her hips swayed salaciously as they walked towards his car. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had always dreamt that this would happen, yet to have it actually happening, Kate was in heaven. Her ruby-painted lips smiled up at him as she slid into the passenger seat. She wanted him to know that she wanted this budding relationship to blossom, to be at his side when they both are old and gray. Pulling out her phone, knowing her flight was in a few days, she couldn't stay away for too much longer. Booking a hotel room since her parents were being pig-headed, and planning her next return trip because this was only the beginning. Kate stood up to the side as Rob spread out the blanket for them as the orchestra began to set up for tonight's show. Why, thank you, Kate said, lightly giggling as her cupped hand caught the crumbs from the crackers she was nibbling on with a bit of creamy, rich cheese. Watching how the setting sun played along his face as the music played in the background, she had all but forgotten about the other people that had come to enjoy the show. To her, as the wind gently rolled along that grassy knoll, it felt like they were the only people in the world at that moment. Resting her head on Rob's right shoulder as the first stars of the night began to appear on that black velvet curtain, snuggling close to him as they watched the band play. Once they left, Rob drove to her place. Once they were near the house, Kate said, I have to fly back to New York in 2 days. I want this to work, Robbie. I want to show you that I am the only one you will ever need. I hope you want that too, but I know for you it will take time given what my sister did. So, what do you say? We take this one day at a time. Are you asking me out? Rob asked, with a slight smile on his lips. Yep, Kate hummed, as she nodded her head vehemently. To go out with a beautiful woman? Rob smiled inwardly at Kate's excited and bashful look as she waited for his answer. I'd be a fool to say no. Oh, Robbie. Kate squealed as she threw her arms around him. You don't know how long I've waited to hear those words. She sighed happily as she held him close. You don't mind if we have breakfast again, do you? She asked, as Rob opened the passenger door for her. I would love to, Rob said, beaming down at her as he held out his hand to her. I was hoping you would say that, Kate said, looping her arm around his as he escorted her to the front door of her parents' home. I really enjoyed tonight, Robbie, she sighed blissfully. So did I. I hope you're prepared for this, because now that I've got, that certainly will be enough of that. Mom, Kate moaned as her mother stood in the doorway. Do you have any idea what time it is? I was worried sick. I'm 22, not a little kid. Kate huffed as her mother dragged her into the house. I'll call you Robbie, she shouted as her father dragged her deeper into house. I think you should be getting home. Her hard eyes narrowed at Rob as she shut the door in his face. A day before Thanksgiving, for the past few weeks, Rob's relationship with Kate was growing steadily stronger by the day. He had even taken a detour to New York once his impromptu sales trip a week ago was over. How he felt like a teenager when Kate stood there at the exit gate. He had stayed for 2 days in that city before returning home. Yet those 2 days were magical. Kate had showed him all around the city. Her company offices. He had to admit some of the garments she had showed him he had wondered how they would look on that body of hers. He simply just enjoyed her company. What she said was correct, he wasn't ready for sex yet, not after what her sister had done to him. Rob wanted to be in the right kind of mind frame when they did take their relationship further. He didn't want to rush anything with her. He wanted this to work even if he had to take a red-eye to New York to see her. Rob was resting on his couch surfing the channels. He would shyly glance at his phone. He had sent her a text a few hours ago, yet she hadn't texted him back, and he didn't want to come off as needy. That never looked good when you're in the beginning stages of a relationship. Still, he was a little worried. If she was busy, she normally texted him back in an hour. Quickly sitting up in his seat as a knock came upon his door. Rob wasn't expecting anyone. Sure, his parents and sister had been burning up his phone bugging him if he was going over to their house tomorrow, which he promptly ignored. Yet as the door swung open, his jaw dropped in his surprise as Kate stood on his porch and her bag by her feet. "Robbie!" Kate cried joyously as she threw her arms around his neck, planting a very long-awaited kiss on his lips. She had been dying to do that all through the flight. "I like that expression," she said, with a big smile as she stepped back. "Why didn't you call? I would have come and got you," Rob said, very pleased to see her. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Kate said bashfully, rubbing the toe of her sneaker on the threshold of the doorway as she placed her hands behind her. "And by the look on your face you were," she said, her smile returning to her lips. "Of course, I was. Why wouldn't I be?" Rob said, wrapping her in another warm hug, inhaling her scent as he nuzzled her neck, feeling how she rested her cheek against his chest, sighing as she held him tightly back. Kate had missed being in his arms the moment he left New York. The world just seemed to be set right every time she felt his arms around her. Her hands rested in his as she stood at arm's length, loving how those eyes of his looked at her, like she was the only woman in the world. How could my sister be so stupid to give up a man like Robbie? She asked herself. "So," his eyes glanced down at her bag, "you aren't staying at your parents'?" "Nope," Kate said, with an impish grin. "I thought I'd stay with you. If you," stepping closer to him, "don't mind if your hot girlfriend stays here, do you?" she asked, pressing her chest against his. "Not one bit," Rob said with a coy smile. "I have just the room that you can relax in," he said, never letting go of her hand as she reached for her bag. "I like it," Kate said, as she surveyed the master bedroom, yet something seemed off. As she looked around, she couldn't feel him in that room. "But you don't sleep here, do you?" she asked, knowing it had to be where he once shared his bed with her sister. Rob shook his neck. "Then I don't want it," Kate said, sticking her nose in the air. Her lips formed a cute little pout as she peered at him through her eyelashes. "Well then, wherever shall you stay?" Rob asked, trying not to smile. Her arm wrapped around his waist, pulling him against her. Her light blue eyes had a hunger in them as she stared into his. "With you, of course," Kate purred, feeling her body pressing into his chest. "I don't know if I'll be able to keep my hands to myself. If this hot," feeling her tremble as his fingers skimmed down her spine. "Tight body is pressed against me all night long," Rob said, as his right hand came to rest on her hips, seeing her eyes flutter as he softly caressed her. "I'll risk it," Kate said, breathlessly, her heart hammered in her chest. Rob made her feel sexy, wanted, and most importantly loved. Kate snuggled against Rob as they relaxed on his couch once her things were unpacked in his room, watching a movie that neither were truly paying attention to, just the way Kate wanted it. She wanted his attention on her, so she could fill this home once again with good memories and hopefully replace all the bad ones. Her eyes glanced to his phone as she heard it ding into his face, seeing how a scowl forming on his lips. "Bad news?" Kate asked, quizzically. "No, just my mother bugging me again about Thanksgiving," Rob muttered. "Oh." Her eyes darted to and fro as a devious thought crossed her mind. "I think you should go." "Why?" Rob asked, looking at her skeptically. "Well, my sister will be there, right?" Kate asked. A devilish grin appeared on her lips. "Probably why?" Rob asked, again. Then, her fingers lightly ran up his left thigh, turning her body just enough to allow his left arm to rest on her. "You take me with you and show off your hot girlfriend and show Trisha that you have moved on to a better and more sexy woman," Kate purred. Her tongue curled out, teasing Rob's upper lip. She wanted to show her sister that she had chosen wrong. What she had tossed away was never going to return to her. "Oh, you devious minx," Rob said, his grin touching from ear to ear. "But are you sure you want to parade yourself out like that? You know I'm more than happy to spend tomorrow with just the two of us." How her heart melted at those words. Kate would love just to spend the holiday alone with him. to watch him work over the stove as Rob prepared a meal for them. She knew he could cook. The way he moved around her kitchen was like he'd always belonged there, something that she hoped to make happen in the near future. "I'm sure, Robbie, I wouldn't have suggested it if I wasn't," Kate said, sternly. "All right, as long as you're okay with it," Rob said, as his thumb brushed along her thigh. Pulling up his mother's number, a slight smile graced his lips, knowing this year's Thanksgiving dinner might just be entertaining. "Robert, I wasn't expecting you to call, since you've been screening my calls," his mother said, laying on the guilt trip. "Well, I'm calling now, Mom. So, will we see you here tomorrow? You know your father might not show it, but he was heartbroken that you weren't here on Halloween. You know how he likes to celebrate it. You'll need to set out another plate," Rob said, before his mother could ramble on about what else he had missed out on, glancing at Kate as she nodded her head vehemently. "What do you mean, Robert? Are you dating someone?" his mother asked. Her surprise was clear as day. "Why, yes I am, unless you don't want us to come," Rob said, turning her guilt trip back on his mother. "Oh baby, I'm so happy for you," his mother said, excitedly. "Of course. You and your girlfriend are more than welcome to come tomorrow. However, I need to tell you, Trisha's parents will be here as well. I hope that doesn't make you rethink your decision about coming tomorrow." "Hold on," Rob said, placing his phone on mute. "Your parents will be there, do you?" His voice stilled as that same devilish smile appeared on her lips. "Yeah, that will be fine," he said, as Kate gently squeezed his hand. "Oh, Robert, you have no idea how happy I am to hear that," his mother sighed over the phone. "So, when shall we be seeing you tomorrow?" "Around 1, Rob said, saying his goodbyes before he hung up the phone. Rob huffed as Kate threw herself onto him, feeling a smile forming on his lips as Kate giggled above him as he laid on his back. For the next 5 minutes, they had a very hot make-out session on his couch. That night, as Rob laid in his bed, waiting for Kate to return from the bathroom, his hand ran along the emptiness beside him, knowing that he had indeed chosen wrong in picking Trisha as his wife. She never made him feel alive like he was when Kate was around. Was this simply just the honeymoon phase of their relationship? Was it because he was so broken after Trisha that he wanted someone to love him as he thought Trisha loved him? Rob didn't know how to answer those questions. He hoped it wasn't a fleeting emotion, hoped that it didn't evaporate one day. "Robbie." Kate's voice was filled with lust and longing as she stood in the doorway, the hallway light haloing her body. "I take it that you like the outfit?" Kate asked sinfully, as her eyes ran down her body then flickered up to him. "Very much so," Rob nodded, trying not to drool as he drank in her body. "Good. This will be next year's new edition," Kate said, feeling powerful as she approached the bed. They made tender love. Kate was sighing in bliss as she rested her head on his chest, her hand lightly brushing along it, knowing this was how it was always meant to be. "How do I look?" Kate asked, as she stood in Rob's bedroom wearing a spaghetti-strapped, black slip dress that reached down to just below her knees. Her matching pumps made her legs more defined. She did a small turn as he stood there in a plain blue dress shirt and slacks. They didn't make Kate appear slutty. On the contrary, they made her look sophisticated. Her matching shawl rested in the nooks of her elbows as her hands rested before her, holding her small clutch. Kate had spent a good deal of time in the master bathroom due to the space to get her hair just the way she liked it. She wanted to walk into that house and stun everyone there when they saw her on Rob's arm, namely her sister. Her emerald earrings swayed as she smiled lovingly at Rob as his eyes ran up and down her body. "Beautiful," Rob said, matter-of-factly. "Why did you get dressed up?" "It's only Thanksgiving dinner." "Why?" Kate cooed as her toned legs closed the space between them. "Why wouldn't I want to show off my new boyfriend? Why wouldn't I want to see my sister's shocked face knowing I have the better man?" Kate cooed. Her lips curved into a mischievous smile as her painted lips neared his. Then, matching her smile, "We shouldn't disappoint them, now, should we?" Rob asked, loving how her body felt against his. As if the gods, the fates, whomever made this woman just for him. No, I think we shouldn't," Kate said. Her blue eyes glinted as she tasted the man that commanded her mind one more time. "Such a gentleman," she sighed in a teasing manner as he held the passenger door open for her, blowing him a kiss as he chuckled, pleased to see that smile finally becoming a prominent feature on his face, watching his body move around his car. So pleased that she was the one that had brought him out of that dark hole. She prayed that her light would always guide him when he was lost, as she hoped his would do the same for her. Her eyes shined in her love for him as her hand slipped into his as Rob backed out of his driveway, placing a kiss on the back of Rob's hand. silently telling him that she would always be at his side. "It will be okay, Robbie," Kate said softly, gently squeezing his hand as they pulled into the roundabout driveway of his parents' home. "I'm here. You just focus on me, don't think about her," she said sternly, knowing his tightening grip on the steering wheel was due to seeing his brother's car. "Why would I ever think about her when you're standing at my side?" Rob asked, seeing how her face was becoming bright red. "Robbie," Kate gushed. "But go on, talk all sweet-like to me," she said, fanning her face. "Trust me, Kate, you're twice as smart, strong, and 10 times more beautiful than she, Trisha, will ever be," Rob said, loving how he could make this sublime, successful, intelligent woman befuddled. Oh look." Kate stammered, quickly opening the door, trying to make her escape. She felt her chest becoming flushed as his chuckle followed after her. "Did you know you're so cute when you get all bashful like this?" Rob asked, noting how her cheeks got a deeper shade of red. "Well," brushing off imaginary lint from her dress, unable to look him in the eye. Her arm hooked around his. Even if he had made her blush like mad, she still wanted to feel his body next to hers. "It's not every day you hear the man you've crushed on for so long being all flirtatious," Kate said, playfully sticking her nose in the air. Feeling her smile raising the corner of her lips, her eyes shot wide as Rob whispered in her ear. "Oh my God. Oh my," she repeated in her mind as his lustful words filled her body with a heat that couldn't be quenched. "Uncle Robbie." Debbie squealed in delight as her 6-year-old legs carried her across his parents' yard. Her high-pitched voice caught those unaware to look in her direction. Rob braced himself as Debbie barreled into his legs. Her happy eyes gazed up at him as she hugged his legs tightly. "Robbie." Janet quickly followed after her daughter. "I thought you wouldn't be coming today." Janet sighed happily into his shoulder. Rob looked down to his left as Matt's tiny hand slipped into his. His infectious smile stared up at him. His innocent eyes told him how happy he was to see his uncle. "Been a while, man," Mark said, as his wife moved off to the side. "I bet I have you to thank for getting my stubborn little brother here," Janet said, flashing Kate a smile. "I might have had a hand in it," Kate said, smirking at Rob. "Why don't you just look stunning?" Janet said, in awe as she held Kate at arm's length, shooting her husband a sly look as she noted how he was checking her out without appearing to do so. "Janet, just don't stand there," his mother said, as she stood on the patio. "Bring your brother here," she said, with a broad, happy smile. "Come on, you too." Janet flashed her brother and Kate a smile as she took hold of each of their hands, trying to remember when Mark looked at her like her brother was slyly doing when he peered at Kate. "My Robert, you didn't tell me you were bringing—" "Kate, was it?" his mother asked, trying to remember her name. "You didn't tell me your date would be Trisha's sister," she said, her eyes cutting to her son as she welcomed Kate to the festivities. "You didn't ask," Rob said, indifferently. "Kate." Trisha gasped as her drink fell from her hand as she stepped out onto the porch. Her jealousy burned in her veins as her eyes ran down her sister's body than her own. Knowing the sweater that hid the growing bump and her plain blue jeans were nothing compared to that elegant dress Kate was wearing. Her envy was plain as day in her eyes as she noted how her sister hung onto Rob. "Brad, go get a broom and dustpan," his mother ordered. "We don't want the kids to step in the glass." Brad couldn't take his eyes off of Kate. He had thought he had beaten his brother, had thought he had gotten the more beautiful sister. He had thought he had gotten the better of his brother, yet it appeared that he was wrong. "Right," Brad muttered, moving into his childhood home, knowing he would have to break his brother once again. He was just going to have to figure out how to approach Kate. He so did enjoy breaking up relationships. When he had done so to his brother, it was the greatest triumph he ever had. Plus, the year-long blackballing of his brother was an excellent bonus. "Kate, what are you doing here?" Trisha asked, stepping over the broken glass. "What does it look like?" Kate retorted, pressing her body closer to Rob as she felt his muscles tense as her sister stood beside Rob's mother. "I'm escorting my boyfriend to his family's Thanksgiving dinner," she said, letting Trisha know that she was outplacing her in every way possible, inwardly enjoying the look on her sister's face. "However, we can always leave if we aren't going to be welcomed here." "What?" Rob's father barked. "I will not have a guest in my house feel unwelcomed," he said, walking towards the patio door. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming into town, and that you were coming here with him?" Kate's mother said, trying to keep her disdain from her voice in front of Rob's parents. "Well, given how you acted the last time I was home, I thought it best not to tell you," Kate said, putting on airs. "Besides, Robbie is enjoying my stay at his house, aren't you, baby?" she whispered seductively into his ear, smirking at her mother's look and the anger in her sister's eyes. "Don't get angry, sister. Someone was bound to swoop in and scoop up such an amazing man," Kate cooed. The backs of her fingers brushed down the side of Rob's right cheek. "When you threw away someone as good as this man." "For that," she said, her eyes cutting hard into Brad as he stood in the doorway with broom in hand. She had sized him up the moment she first saw him. She knew he was a sleazeball. Kate had seen plenty of men like him in New York to know one from a glance. Brad kept his anger in check when his brother gave him that smug smile of his. He felt a chill forming in the air as those eyes of hers shot daggers at him. It only made his conquest of her all the more sweeter when he got her into his bed. "Robbie," Trisha tried to put on the charm. "I know I've hurt you, but did you have to go after?" "Correction, sister. I went after him," Kate said, shooting her sister a challenging smile. "I must say, I certainly came out on top," she said, allowing her innuendo to hang in the air. "You did like that, didn't you?" Rob nodded, not caring how uncomfortable his and her family were as Kate flirted with him. Janet looked to her husband, wondering why he never talked to her like that. Just because they had been married for 7 years didn't mean she didn't want to be flirted with. To feel as sexy as obviously Kate did at that moment. "Robert, come in the house, the game is about to start," his father said, his smile reaching his eyes, glad to see his son home. "Go on," Kate said, lightly patting his bicep. "I'll join you soon." Months had passed since that eventful Thanksgiving day. Christmas was just as entertaining for Rob as Thanksgiving was. He had even seen Brad sporting a spilt lip, the cause he couldn't say, yet Kate never left his side the rest of the day. Only muttering to him that Brad was a sleaze, he couldn't argue with her on that point. However, he did confront his brother while Kate waited in his car, laying his brother out cold when Brad sneered at how good Kate's bum felt in his hand. Since then, Brad had kept his head down and out of his way. That glass jaw of his can only take so much punishment. Rob was totally in love with Kate, and she knew the time was coming. She could see it in his eyes that he wanted to take it further, and she couldn't wait for that day. Rob and Kate were in the middle of a makeout session when her phone rang. "Let me deal with this and I'll repay you most handsomely," Kate purred as her lips plucked at his. "Sure," Rob nodded, knowing she took her job seriously. "What?" Turning his head, Rob watched Kate pacing the hallway. "You're telling me she couldn't close a multi-million-dollar deal?" Arching an eyebrow as he heard Kate nearly scream into the phone. "I knew I should have taken care of this myself." Rob rose from his bed when her hand hit the wall. "You tell the owners I'm on the first flight out. Tell that incompetent woman she's fired. Hopefully, I can salvage this deal." Kate turned as she heard footsteps behind her. A wicked thought crossed her mind. "I'll be there in a few hours," Kate said, before she hung up the phone. "Sweetheart, someone screwed up and the sexy boss has to go fix the mess," Rob finished her sentence. "Yep," Kate hummed. "I'm sorry that I have to cut our time short," she said, apologetically. "No, I get it," Rob said, pressing her close to him. "I have an idea, though," Kate said. A sinful smile appeared on her lips. "Oh, how about you come with me? You have years of experience in closing deals like these," Kate said, hoping that he would say yes. "Then we wouldn't have to end this night until we're together again." Rob thought long and hard on it. Was selling women's lingerie any different than selling robots and their parts? "I don't know, Kate. I don't have any idea how to sell underwear. I just know what looks hot on this little body of yours," Rob said, always pleased with himself when he could make those cheeks of hers redden. "It's simple." Kate's voice stuttered, very pleased that he found her hot in his words. "All you have to do is run the numbers for them, how much cheaper it would be for them to put my product on their shelves instead of my competition and so on. Something I'm sure you can do extremely well," she said, her hands resting on his chest. Ever since Christmas, and after what his disgusting brother tried to do, she has had her people looking into his sales record and his professional life. It was her hope that she could lure him away from his job to come work for her, not only because she knew he would be a great asset to her company, but also because she wanted to take care of him, and the days, weeks, away from one another was getting to be too much for her. "Okay, if you think I can do it, I don't want to hurt your business," Rob said, softly. "I wouldn't have asked if I didn't think you could do it," Kate said, tasting his lips once again. "So the question is, how long do I pack for?" Rob asked, with a coy smirk. "Forever and ever. I'm not letting you go," Kate said, ominously, hoping that everything went as she planned as she spoke on the phone. If it did, then Rob would only be returning to this place to turn in his resignation and pack up his house. Then their life together could truly start. "I hope not," Rob chuckled as they walked into his bedroom. The engines of the private plane roared as they raced down the tarmac. Kate had chartered a plane due to the lack of commercial flights to the city that housed the headquarters of the major outlet. She hoped to get her wares to line their women's section in their numerous stores. Soon they were at the meeting. "Thank you for meeting with me," Kate said, greeting the CEO, CFO, and their VP of Sales and Marketing as her own CFO, and head of marketing sat across from them at that long wooden table. "Yes, tell us. What can your company offer ours that we didn't hear yesterday?" the CEO asked, his face showing that he wasn't impressed by her associate's poor performance. "I believe I can answer that," Rob said, stepping up to the table, seeing the looks of uncertainty in the two women's eyes that sat beside Kate. Kate, on the other hand, nodded her support. "If I may?" he asked politely, as he gestured to the PowerPoint projector. "Very well, Norman," the company's CFO said, sharing a nod with his other peers. "As you can see here," Rob said, pointing at the graph on the whitewashed wall, "with the amount you buy in bulk from Agent Provocateur, Calvin Klein, La Perla, and so on, limits the amount you can sell in your stores and how many units your company is turning over every month. And I know that as the heads of this company, you don't want the products lingering on your shelves taking up valuable space in your stores if your customers can't afford the products you're offering," he said, seeing the men begin to nod in agreement. "We at Vivian's Closet of Corsets can offer a far cheaper and on par, if not better, quality product that I'm sure your customers will enjoy, especially by the price," Rob said, flashing the men a smile hearing them chuckle. Watching the men nod when Rob went through what they paid their current vendors with what they could get from Kate's company for the same price, then going through what each bra and panty set would cost in their stores after they put their own markup on them. He knew he had them hooked when they sat up straighter in their seats, glancing at Kate as she slyly nudged her marketing director, who rose from her chair and left the room to fetch the models they had paid to show off the garments. "Gentlemen, if you would," Rob nodded to the other side of the room as the three women walked in, each wearing a robe. "We thought a proper demonstration of our product would be a better selling point than just plain numbers," he said, taking their cue, removing their robes. "These are from our new fall line," Kate said, taking on the poise of a confident CEO. "As you can see, gentlemen, while our products are cheaper than our competitors, that doesn't mean we skimp on the quality of the fabric we use," she said, watching how the men eyed the half-naked women as they showed off her wares, slyly noting how Rob's eyes stayed on her, and not the gorgeous women whose assets and other things were on display. "How do they feel compared to, say, Victoria's Secret?" the CEO asked one of the models, as the thong she was wearing separated and lifted her hips. "Extremely good. You don't really feel like you're wearing them, but then move a certain way, and it moves with it, letting you feel how soft it is along your skin. Don't forget those pesky wires." One of the other models scowled. "These don't have them. They have no problem supporting these babies," she giggled. "Thank you, ladies," Kate said, glancing to her marketing director to take them out of the room. "And you say you can guarantee that if we buy from you that your product will move more units than everyone else?" "If you look here," Rob said, pulling up the spreadsheet of the companies she already supplies order of units sold over the past 2 years. "As you can see, each quarter has seen an increase in units ordered," showing off the graph that tracked the increase of money that came in after each quarter. If it was executives in the robotic industry or the lingerie industry, money was money. Rob could see their calculating minds racing as they crunched the numbers in their heads, shutting off the PowerPoint when Kate nodded to him, indicating his part in these negotiations were over, excusing himself so Kate could take over and not be distracted by his presence. "Robbie, you were amazing." Kate squealed in joy once they were outside after the meeting lasted another 3 hours once Rob left the room, throwing her arms around him, giggling into his neck as she felt his arms around her. "Thanks," Rob said, bashfully. He was just bullshitting his way through most of it. "You earned it," planting a long, passionate kiss on his lips, telling him how much she appreciated it. "I might just have to steal you away from that company and have you work for me," Kate said, planting her seed. "Only if you match my commission," Rob joked. "I'll do one better. Add another 5% to it," Kate said, in all seriousness. "Wait, what?" Rob said, surprised. "That's right, come work for me. This is no joke," Kate said, seriously, trying to keep her smile hidden at his shocked look. "Won't us date?" "Not if you don't let it," Kate said, her lips only an inch away from his. "I told you months ago that I want to take care of you, and I know you would do well once you're away from that place," she said, pressing herself against him. "And that starts now, yes?" Rob asked, coyly. After that day that stretched into 2, once they had fully sated themselves with their bodies, Kate had inquired if he still thought her offer was a joke. Little did he know she had already drawn up a contract for him, She couldn't keep the smile from her face as she laid it before him as they recouped some of their spent energy. Watching how he read through the contract, smiling when his jaw dropped at the signing bonus her company was willing to give him. How her heart melted when Rob didn't hesitate to sign along the dotted line. "Now you have a safe flight. Call me once you land. And do hurry home," Kate said in a wanton purr, telling him that every second he was gone she would long for him. And so, Rob traveled back to that city, a city that had so many memories, good and bad, mostly bad, knowing that he could rent his home as is and just take what he needed or wanted from his home. However, what happened next was all the more pleasing to Rob as the elevator doors rolled open on the top floor of his family's headquarters. All commotion stopped as if a ghost had come to pay them a visit. He felt their eyes on him as he walked down the aisle to his father's office. "I have to call you back?" Rob peered into his sister's office as she quickly put down her phone and leaped from her seat. "Robbie, I'm so happy to see you," Janet shouted in joy as she rushed to embrace her brother. "It's been so long since you've been here," she said, as she pushed herself away. Her eyes glanced down, noting the piece of paper he held in his hand. She had feared this day would come. She did hope that he could work through it, yet she couldn't blame her brother for wanting to distance himself from them. Pulling her brother back in, "Whatever you do, I want you to be happy, even if it means you have to leave us. Just know you are my brother, and I'll always love you. You just better call me and let me know you got to wherever you're going safely, all right?" "Sure thing, sis," Rob said, patting her back. "Dad in his office?" "He's in a meeting." "Robert, Janet, did I hear you?" His mother's eyes widened. Her hands went to her mouth at the sight of her youngest son. "Look at you. You look like a new man," she cooed as she held his face in both hands. "Here," Rob said, handing over his resignation. "What's this?" "Robert, you sure this is what you want?" his mother asked, quizzically. "I'm sure," Rob nodded, his eyes glancing over at his brother's office, seeing that smug smile of his, thinking that he had beaten him. Little did he know that it was he that had won the most wondrous thing in the world, and what his brother thought mattered very little to him. "While I'm going to miss you, I just hope wherever you end up brings some happiness to you." "It already has," Rob stated. "It's Kate, isn't it?" Janet asked, smiling at his blushing cheeks. "I knew it. Well, good for her," poking her brother's stomach. "You better take care of yourself." "Of course. And you better invite us to the wedding if there is one," his mother said, with a loving smile. "At least come tell your father goodbye before you head off," she said, reaching out and taking hold of his hand. "And just who lured you away, him?" his father asked, once his mother had filled him in. "Oh, just this company in New York that's run by a very smart woman who knows talent when she sees it," Rob said, longing to be at Kate's side again. "I see," his father muttered, when his wife mouthed Kate's name. "I hope you find what you're looking for, son. Just know if you get lost, you always have a port in the storm here." And with that, Rob was on the road to New York with all the belongings he wanted to take. His sister would manage his rental until she found someone to move into it. While he might not know what's to come next in this new adventure of his, he knew one thing: the more miles he put behind him, the better and lighter his heart felt. "Robbie?" Kate's voice played through the speakers of his car. Rob took a long breath and said, "Honey, I'm coming home." 2 years later, Rob chased little Lexi as her little legs carried her away from her father, giggling as she did. Her fine light brown hair float on the air, her ruby, chubby cheek lifted as she smiled once her father plucked her off the floor. Kate watched in joy as the two interacted with one another. It was only a few months once he moved to New York that they got married. Sure, they had their fights. What couple doesn't? Yet they worked through it, knew what they had was special, and knew even if they looked all over the world, they would never find someone like they were for each other. "No fair," Kate pouted as she watches Rob give Lexi a raspberry on her stomach. "Where's mine, she asked, with a devilish smile. "Well, my lady, if you follow me into the bedroom." Rob wiggled his eyebrows. "Hold that thought," Kate said, as her personal cell phone rang. Holding, Rob muttered as he held Lexi up towards the ceiling. "Smartass," Kate muttered low as she answered her phone. "Mom? What's wrong?" "What? She found him doing what?" "She's there now?" She couldn't keep her wicked smile from showing as her mother told her how Trisha had come running home with her son, crying about how 6 different women had filed child support claims against him, and that upon learning this his father and mother dug into his sales records, seeing how they had been light for the past few months. They were pressing charges against him for laundering money from the corporate accounts. Well, Trisha knew what she was getting into. "What do you want me to do about it?" Seeing Rob's huge smile as she had put her phone on speaker, looking down at Rob's pocket as his own phone went off, and ending her call with her mother when she demanded that Kate care about the fate of her sister that Trisha so willing walked into. "I've heard," Rob said, in that cold, indifferent tone of his. "I don't know, Dad. Lexi needs someone to watch her." "Fine. I'll do it for 20%, Rob said, allowing his father to drone on and on about how good he was and how sorry they failed to see that. "But I do it from here. This is my home now." "Damn right it is," Kate muttered sternly, taking Lexi from him, smiling motherly at their child as the setting sun bathed them, knowing this was how it was meant to be. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.